Hey guys, it's Monday, and if you watched last week, you'll know that we started a new series where we're discussing the news that happens around the scale market. There was a handful of things that happened last week, so I think this week is really going to spur some discussion. Before we jump into the big discussion points, let's run through a few of the new releases that we saw in last week. Last week, I did miss the announcement of the J Concepts King Sling body, as well as the tires and wheels that were announced along with it. Really cool little setup to turn basically any solid axle monster truck into a really cool looking mega truck. Should be an awesome little conversion for the Axial SMT10. I think that one is an already great looking platform for a mega truck conversion. Last week, Tekin also did the official release of their new servo line. They've got everything from a high-speed, low-profile servo to the monster torque servos that we'll find very useful in the crawling scene. And the specs from those are all over, up to over 500 ounce-inches in the big ones. Pricing and links I'll put below. Last week, I mentioned wanting to do some hobby shop tour videos, and we had some great comments about starting that. So I've done two over the last week and released them both. The first one we did was at Fast Track Hobbies up in Rockland, California. Fast Track shows very well on video, had a lot of fun, slot car tracks and everything built in there. Makes for a great time. And then this weekend, on my way up north, my wife and I stopped in Chico, California, and saw the A-Main brick and mortar store. A-Main has a huge website, but they also have a freestanding brick and mortar store that has a ton of inventory and is really an awesome shop. I've got a bunch of local hobby shops to still hit. That one was just on my way on a trip up north. Thought it would be a good opportunity to hit it. I've got some new ones that I'm going to try and do this coming week of the shops here in town. So those were the two little things that I noticed over the last week to discuss, but the big thing that made for the most activity and comments over the last week was the Big Squid 1.9 scale truck shootout. Big Squid grabbed 6 1.9 scale trucks and did a shootout. That was the Axial SCX-10-2 ready to run, the Jeep Cherokee version. Then they had the Marlin Crawler from RC 4-wheel drive based on the TF2. They had the HPI Venture, which isn't really out yet, but they did have a holdable one. The Vetera Ascender with the K10 body version, the Red Cat Gen 7, and the Traxxas TRX4. Now, for the most part, that's a pretty good cross-section of the market. I don't think that the Trailfinder 2 really fits against those other cars because it's a leaf spring hard body truck. By all means, it's a really nice scale truck, but it's not really fitting against those other ones. Something like the G-Made Komodo would have been a better choice to go head-to-head with those other crawlers, but then another article popped up today about the Marlin Crawler on Big Squid, and it said that RC 4-wheel drive basically insisted that they wanted to go into that shootout with them. Now, Big Squid is mainly a basher website for, monster trucks and things like that. They do cover some scale stuff. If this was just another shootout on Big Squid, even with these same cars, most of us may not have even heard about it. However, it did make a decent splash over the last week because of how the rankings fell at the end of their shootout. Now, in first place was the Traxxas TRX4, and I can see that. It makes sense. It's a really good car with a ton of options in it, and in general, it's just a newer, modern car. I could easily see someone having the opinion of that car being the best in a shootout. Where the real discussion came in was the rest of the list. In second place, they had the Red Cat Gen 7. Third place, the Vetera Ascender. Tied for fourth, they had the HPI Venture and the Trailfinder 2 Marlin Crawler. And then in last place, they had the Axial SCX-10-2 ready to run. Having a Red Cat in second place and an SCX-10-2 in last place, that's where things look weird. They based this shootout on a number of different categories. First was speed. Second, price. Third, the transmitter. Fourth category was trail driving. The fifth was rock crawling. Then sixth was features. Lastly was looks. Now, if those are the categories you want to use for a 1.9 scale truck shootout, okay. Speed, I could see arguing about, but in general, okay, take it or leave it. Speed is still nice when playing around on the trails. I love wheel speed when I'm crawling, so I can see it. It's not that crazy. Price. Here was one where I actually had an issue with. Price, they just took retail price, sorted them. Cheapest to most expensive was how they ranked them. And that was it. There was no look whatsoever at value for your dollar with what you get as far as quality of the parts. It was just a list of the price and sort it down. No consideration for value. And I have a huge problem with that. The next category they covered was the transmitter. And a lot of people don't change out transmitters. So transmitters can be very important. And a lot of these transmitters actually do have some pretty decent features packed in them. However, it seems like a lot of what they looked at was the comfort in your hand. I've used some of these radios before, and some of the rankings I just can't understand. For example, the Vetera radio, which is a spectrum-based radio, consistently ranked near the bottom in all of them. And I'm not a Spectrum person. I run only Futaba. However, those Spectrum radios are not bad. The range has always been fairly good when I have used them. They don't seem too uncomfortable, but for some reason, that radio was at the bottom of their list. On the other side of it, the RC 4-wheel drive radio was near the top, and I've used that one as well. And the construction of it, I have issues with. So some of this just seems off. So this part of the test was purely subjective. They just ranked them how each of the guys felt and then tallied it up. So it is what it is. So the next two tests, we actually get into some performance other than the top speed part. We have trail driving and rock crawling. Now, for trail driving, the Traxxas one they show coming out on top. I get it. It's got, lockable diffs and a 2-speed, and it can be fun if you like that type of driving. I get it. It makes sense. I can see how people would choose that. Now, in this test, the Red Cat comes in second place. And I think that it is actually important maybe to look at the Red Cat versus these other cars. The Red Cat is basically based on the Axial SCX-10 from like 2009. It's got the old style axles, limited steering. It does have a metal chassis based on the BPC chassis, but in general, you're looking at a really dated car. And how they got it on top of the trail driving above the SCX-10-2, the Vetera Ascender, or the HPI makes me really wonder. But again, it's a subjective test. They just asked these guys to then rank them and go on. Moving into the rock crawling test. The Vetera Ascender comes out on top of this test. The Vetera is a really decent truck overall. However, the gearing in the axles is the major issue with it. It has almost no gear reduction at the axles, which is where it falls behind most of the other vehicles. If it just had better gearing in the axles, it could improve that truck drastically. But without it, you end up with a lot of torque twist. Now, there is fixes and mods to help mask that torque twist. However, these are box stock trucks in this shootout, so none of that's been fixed. The Vetera that they're using is the shorter wheelbase C10 version, so it doesn't even have the benefit of the larger wheelbase. However, it does have a smaller body, so you don't have to try and fit that lunchbox K5 through stuff. Just below the Ascender came the Traxxas TRX4. Now, speaking of lunchbox bodies, you've got this 2-pound Defender body on top of this chassis. That truck does have nice portal axles, gives you a little bit of clearance. So through the rocks, those portals could be a definite advantage. However, that huge, ridiculously heavy body, not an advantage. The Axial SCX-10-2 finally comes in third in this test. Now, the Axial SCX-10-2 that they used was the Cherokee ready to run. Again, a freaking lunchbox body on top of that thing, huge wide bumpers. So in general, those top three cars all have their own issues, but it's still just the final results of this test make you really scratch your head. The second to last part of their shootout was features. If you want to talk about features, TRX4, locking diffs, 2-speed, cruise control thing on the remote. If you want to talk about features, those are features. And if you like those features, that thing's got all of them. Nobody can touch that. Once you go away from that though, basically what they call features is bolted on scale accessories, like a big tire and roof rack on the roof with an internal cage that's covered by blacked out windows. Those aren't features. Those are, if you want to call it scale accessories or you want to put it in that looks column, go for it. But those are not features. Don't call that a feature. Now, you do see people with their scale sleeping bag and their scale firewood cut up and glued in the back of their model. That's not a feature though. That's a customization to make it look different. Don't call it a feature. The last category of their shootout was looks. Very subjective. You can't really argue with 6 people's definition of looks. Even though I really, really want to. And since it's my video, I'm going to. Number one, they've got the RC four-wheel drive Marlin Crawler, which I agree with. Hard body, super scale axles. As far as just a scale model on your desk looks, they are the winner. I wouldn't disagree. Second, Traxxas. I will disagree. I hate the Defender body. I just don't like Defender bodies, but that's because I don't like Defender bodies. In last place is the Axial SCX-10 II. I don't like Cherokee bodies either. So I like Jeeps. I don't like Cherokees. That's why it's a subjective test, and I disagree with it. I think that the Vetera Ascender with that K10 body should have ranked higher. It's got that nice caged out rear bed. The Everest Gen 7's got a generic body on it with a tire on the roof and a bunch of jerry cans, and that makes it rank in 4th place. And the HPI Venture came in 2nd to last. I don't really care for FJs either, but it's a classy looking build overall. It's just not overdone with a bunch of scale roto packs nailed to it everywhere. So once you take all their categories and add them up, you get the Traxxas on top, the Red Cat Gen 7 in 2nd, in 3rd place the Vetera, 4th place was a tie between the Venture and the TF2, and in last place was the Axial SCX-10 II. I personally think that Big Squid completely whiffed on this shootout. They left out parts durability, parts availability, which go hand in hand, and they left out aftermarket. As far as the first two go, parts availability and durability. They said they didn't break anything on the test, and they said they left out the parts availability because the HPI Venture isn't available yet. This is a cool truck in general. I like this truck. But you can't just leave out parts availability because we don't know because it's not out yet. Well, it's not been out yet for like 3 or 2 years now, and we know that HPI has been in trouble with parts availability. So yeah, this truck doesn't have parts available yet, but take a look at HPI parts supply in general right now. Let's hope that HPI fixes all their issues because this is a great truck, this Venture. But if the brand isn't there to support it, you can't just ignore that. Not putting that in the test is a huge miss. And then as far as the durability goes, they said they didn't break anything. Maybe drive a little harder. You're trying to put a test together to show people what cars maybe they should be looking at buying in a ranked order. Maybe you drive a little bit harder in those cases to find out what these guys may run into as they own the cars. Again, I can't believe that they didn't cover some of this. And then lastly, the ability for the aftermarket. This is a different type of market than a lot of the other bashing type markets. Now, I'm not saying that some of those other areas of RC don't have an aftermarket, because they do. However, I don't think that the aftermarket drives those sections of RC like the scale scene does. By not looking at that part of it, it just seems like they don't know the market. And by looking at this test again and looking at the top of their page where it says for bashers by bashers, maybe that's the best explanation for this ranking. I don't think this is their market. That is my lengthy look into what I think was a terrible shootout. Let me know if you think they got it wrong or they got it right. Rank those 6 trucks how you feel they came out in the comments below. Yes, I am an Axial fan. However, I have almost every single one of these trucks here, and I very much disagree with how they put this. I am almost compelled to try and get those all side by side and go do this. That's another topic for another video. That's all the news I've got for this week. We'll see how long this video turns out. I appreciate all the comments from last time. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you on the next one. Oh yeah, I also did not do the electronics in my SCX-10 II this week because my servo is still on back order. Also, thanks to Scale Builders Guild for the hilarious thumbnail image that I used this week. You can find a link to their channel in the description.